first episode of Match Play for 2014 alongside Zach Lamar. I'm Creighton Rabs. Let's just jump right into it, Zach. Starting with some Cal U topics. First of all, California men's basketball with their really what you could call a signature road win, a 59-56 win over number 5 ranked Indiana at the KCAC. Zach, that was a game you and I had the chance to call. Your thoughts?
It was an amazing opportunity to be able to call that game. The first time that Cal has ever won at the KCAC, the women won too. We'll get to that later. But the way that Cal played, I think they played as an entire team because we keep saying throughout the season, they have individual talent. But when they put together, they're very tough to beat. And going on the road to IUP is always a tough challenge. That's only the third loss at home since the KCAC opened. So to get that win on the road is very remarkable for Cal, and hopefully that propels them the rest of the year.
And you look at who really stepped up. Armin Marks is a player we had chosen to player to watch. 13 points and 7 rebounds. Jake Jakubek doing what Jake Jakubek does, chucking threes and leading the team with 15 points. And you had Zoe Murphy with 12 rebounds and 3 blocks, among other contributions. But the one play that really stood out towards the end, you had Josh Dombrowski and Drew Cook with an impressive double team on IEP's leading scorer, who chucks an off-balance shot and pretty much seals the win. So speaking of IEP, the California women with a 69-63 win over the Crimson Hawks, also at the KCAC. That was their women's first win at that facility. Mickey Glenn leading the way with 24 points and 8 assists. And Zach, let's talk about that for a moment.
Yeah, Mickey Glenn was clearly the standout performer. She was approaching a triple-double. She added 6 rebounds as well to her totals you mentioned before. But Cal, they got out to an early lead, and then IEP started getting some momentum. And the first half, you had to see that IEP really, I don't think they had any confidence because they were coming in on a 3-game, 4-game losing streak. So to get that confidence back at halftime, they started doing that. But Cal, their defense just started rattling off some steals, getting some fast break opportunities, and that's really what led them to their first win at IUP.
And you also had a rather unfortunate break for IUP. Lindsay Stamp, the junior from Erie, her IUP's leading scorer, leaves the game with an ankle injury. Her status rest of the season is unknown, but she had entered the game with she had averaged nearly 20 points a game, held to 9 points at Mercyhurst, 7 points against Gannon, and before she left the game against Cal, only 5 points. That's going to be a costly loss for the Crimson Hawks, but nonetheless, 8 out of 9 wins for the Vulcans going forward, so that's a big, obviously that's your big signature road win if you're the Vulcan women. So now moving on, the Vulcan men and women's basketball teams will be off Wednesday. They get with the 9 teams in the division, someone's going to have a day off every Wednesday and Saturday, and this time it's Cal's turn. They're back on the court Saturday at the Convocation Center against Seton Hill. Zach, is this break going to help or possibly hurt the Vulcans?
I think for the women, I think they'll be okay with it because their playoff seeding right now, they're up near the top. I think the men, it's going to hurt them a little bit because they have to start working their way into the playoffs. They're 7th currently, only 6 teams get in. You have teams like Seton Hill, who's in front of you. You beat them, start working your way up. UPJ, Mercyhurst, but a lot of those teams are coming to the Convocation Center. Some home wins are going to really help to propel you into the playoffs if you're going to make that push towards the end of the year.
And you look at right now, you have that. There's also the train of thought whether, okay, you have this break after you picked up 8 or 9 wins. You're worried about whether or not that's going to kill any momentum. The Cal women have a couple of injuries, but the men, after that big win over at IUP, you definitely, on the one hand, maybe it's good to have them temper that enthusiasm down so they don't get overly cocky, but at the same time, there's still plenty of basketball left to be played. Got 9 games left in the season, so we'll see what happens. And speaking of, since we don't have a basketball game on Wednesday, we're still going to be busy. This Friday, we'll be over at Hamer Natatorium for our coverage of Cal U's swim team, Zach. You'll be there, I presume, so let's talk about that for a moment.
Yeah, it's our only swimming event we'll get to do. First time I'll ever actually get to see our swimming team in action, so I'm excited about that. I know coming into this, they've won 6 of their last 7 dual meets, so they're really on a roll. They're 6-3 overall in the year. beating Lynn in their last time out by I think around 40 or 50 points. So they're going to face Chatham, Mansfield, and I believe Clarion or Lockhaven. You'll have to correct me on that in a moment. But good opportunity at home to show if some of the fans come out to see exactly what our swim team can do.
And it's actually Lockhaven, not Clarion, although I would not mind seeing a dual meet between Cal and Clarion someday. Maybe somebody in the PSAC will make that happen, but nonetheless, I mean, you look at some of the key swimmers on the team. Of course, Clarissa Enslin went to nationals last year. She's going to be leading the way, but it's going to be these dual meets are really a good indication of where Cal stands going forward. A few years ago, they were, I believe it was 2 years ago actually, they were third or fourth in the PSAC swim meet, and that's unfortunately. Well, we'll see what happens. I'll be the first to admit I'm not an expert on swim by any stretch of the imagination, but moving on. This is a segment where you, the fans, get to participate in the show. You can log on to Twitter, CUTV_PA with the hashtag MatchPlayCUTV, all one word. And of course, we're on Facebook at California University Television, easy for me to say. So Zach, since it's our first show, we don't officially have a fan topic. We'll make up a topic. What is your favorite Olympic sport?
Well, for favorite Olympic sport, since the Winter Olympics are coming up, I decided to go Winter Olympics. And I kind of have two choices here. Favorite one to watch, although I know nothing of the rules. I don't know why I like it, curling. And it's a cult hit, I guess you can call it, in the Olympics. I just find it entertaining. But for favorite sport to actually follow, I have to go with hockey because I've been following the team selection. Sidney Crosby just named captain of Canada, a great accomplishment for him. So that has to be the one that I always follow the most when it comes around the Winter Olympics.
I think it's hard for me to really pick a favorite Olympic sport because I'll be the first to admit I'm somewhat indifferent to the Olympics in general. But with that being said, I mean, curling's not a bad option, but I just enjoy, for some reason, when I was growing up, I always enjoyed watching the luge, watching these guys flying down this twisty-turvy downhill incline on a sled. And I mean, it looks easy, but it really isn't. So that's always almost for, I guess, some morbid gallows humor. You never know. Maybe you'll see a crash or something. All right. So when we return, you see we're still getting the bugs out a little bit, but break out the Primanis, grab a pop. We'll have Pittsburgh topics coming up next as Match Play continues on CUTV.
You are watching CUTV, California University Television.
And welcome back to Match Play. He's Zach, I'm Creighton. Now we've got some topics Yinzers can appreciate. It's our Pittsburgh segment. Let's start off with the Pens. They are riding a 15-game winning streak inside Consol Energy Center as they enter Monday night's game against the Florida Panthers. Zach, state of the Panthers if you're, well, let's say you're Ray Shero.
Well, going against the Panthers aren't, of course, the toughest of opponents in the Eastern Conference this year. And with the new divisions, they're not in the same division as the Penguins, so they got placed with Boston, I believe Ottawa, teams like that. So they're going to have a tough time. But the Penguins, as long as they keep riding this home winning streak, they are definitely on the way to sealing a playoff spot in the near future. They are so far ahead in the Metropolitan standings above teams like Washington, New York, Columbus even making a late push. So I think as long as they keep getting home wins, you can't overlook the Panthers, though, tonight. No, you can't
overlook any opponent, but you take a look at the Metropolitan Division, which is one of the dumbest names I've ever heard of in my life. You look at it, like, it's basically the Pens and everybody else. You have Philadelphia, you have the Rangers, you have the Devils. I mean, right now, I mean, it's almost laughable, but, I mean, the one thing you look at, the Pens have had some injury issues throughout the course of the season. At some point, like James Neal is out and Malkin's out. Now they're all back. Hopefully, if they can all get healthy by the time the winter break, Olympic break passes, they could be dangerous. Meanwhile, let's go from the ice swing over to the North Shore, talk a little baseball. Pirates had 6 players arbitration eligible They have reached agreements with all 6 players, leading the way. Pedro Alvarez he's going to get paid. It's going to go from $700,000 last season to $4.25 million. Zach, this has to bode well. What kind of message are the Pirates sending?
I think the Pirates are trying to send a message that they know they have some young talent in-house with Walker, Alvarez, Gabby Sanchez was arbitration eligible, Mazzaro, and Snyder as well. So keeping those players in is going to help the Pirates maybe not take a step back in 2014 like some people might think they will after their big season they had in 2013, finally making it to the playoffs and a winning season. I think with the talent they have, though, and a lot more talent to come, you have Jameson Tyan, Gregory Polanco in the minors. You're going to see a lot more future building for the Pirates with some success as well.
And here's one of the things they were talking about, and I believe this was something they brought up. It was either on 93.7 Fan or somewhere out in the Twitter sphere. They're talking about maybe Lumbo coming in to replace Garrett Jones at first, or maybe throw Polanco in the outfield with Marte. I'll tell you what, you put Polanco out there in that outfield with Marte and McCutchen, that might be the most dangerous outfield in baseball. But I guess still quite a few questions left. But the Pirates' salary by the time the season rolls around could hit $80 million, almost unfathomable a couple years ago. Meanwhile, we stay on the North Shore. Let's talk about a little Steelers football here. 21 unrestricted free agents for the Steelers during this offseason. Most notable ones, you have Brett Kiesel, Emmanuel Sanders, it's easy for me to say, and Jason Werlitz, Ryan Clark. Who do you think who's the big priority for the Steelers to keep?
I think the top 3, if you're going to rank them in priority, Jason Werlitz number 1, so then you can get rid of Lamar Woodley. I know Woodley's so hyped up, but he's overpaid and he's too off injured. Al Woods, he's a defensive end. You put him at defensive tackle, you may not have to get one in the draft because McClendon is a better defensive end than tackle. And then third behind that, I would say Jericho Cotchery because Ben needs a guy to throw to. He led the team with 10 touchdowns this season. You need someone out there on the field that Ben can rely on, and Cotchery is that go-to guy.
I would definitely go with Cotchery. I mean, he was probably their most clutch receiver behind Antonio Brown. Emmanuel Sanders, he's okay sometimes, but he's kind of hit and miss. Ryan Clark is another free agent. I know Clark's declined a little bit, but I'd still say he's a key contributor to that team. Werlitz, I think, can help stabilize that defensive line because you want to see where Jarvis Jones is. And I know a lot of people like to see Brett Kiesel come back, but that could be a long shot depending on whether or not Diesel decides to take a hometown discount. But we shall see what happens. Now on to Pitt men's basketball. The Panthers went up to the Carrier Dome in Syracuse to renew an old Big East rivalry with both teams now in the ACC. The Orange winning 59-54. Zach, you have signature road wins and signature road losses.
Yeah, and actually, Pitt moved up in the rankings by 2 spots from 22 to 20 in the AP polls today I saw this morning. So I think voters are starting to realize, although Pitt doesn't have a win against a top 50 RPI team, they're still one of the top challengers in the ACC behind maybe Clemson, Duke. If they get on a roll, you're always going to expect Duke up there at the top. But Pitt's really starting to show their stuff here in the season, that they're going to be a challenger in the ACC and probably a sleeper team in the NCAA tournament.
I think here's my problem with calling Pitt a sleeper team. I mean, their non-conference schedule, no offense, it's a joke. It's the equivalent of Cal taking on a Penn State satellite. That's how weak Jamie Dixon's non-conference schedules. I mean, you look at Tom Izzo at Michigan State. He'll always schedule some tough opponents. Yes, he'll toss a cupcake or two in there, but that's why Izzo's teams are battle-tested. A couple notes from that game. Pitt, 13 for 23 from the foul line. You miss 10 foul shots. Lose by 5. Do the math. And on that note, we now talking some Penn State football. Big sign by James Franklin, the former East Stroudsburg quarterback and Vanderbilt coach, now up at Happy Valley. He got someone big to fill the shoes with Larry Johnson Sr. heading off to Columbus.
Yeah, I think James Franklin is a real big hire for Penn State. You had Bill O'Brien, and as a Penn State fan, I was sad to see Bill O'Brien go, but I knew eventually it would come because he groomed Tom Brady for a couple seasons. I mean, you're not going to deny his skill set as a coach. But I think James Franklin being able to turn around Vanderbilt, that's saying something because Vanderbilt was not a good football team for the last 10 or so years before Franklin came in. I think he's going to continue Penn State going on the fast track with Hackenberg at quarterback as well.
And speaking of those new hires, the guy replacing LJ Sr. at Happy Valley is former Gateway head coach and athletic director Terry Smith. Smith was a former Penn State player. He led Gateway to 4 Whitfield titles. He had spent last year as a recruiting coordinator at Temple. Of four Gateway players are among the top 33 recruits in all of Pennsylvania. 2 of them had verbally committed to Temple, in part because of Terry Smith. So it'll be interesting if he can not only get those Gateway players, but a lot more Whitfield talent heading up I-99 to State College. As time will tell. When we return, we are going national, we're going international. We go around the world in one segment right here on Match Play on CUTV.
Let's take it to the field. I come through like a freight train, about to push the line back. Only see the gold line, don't matter if your line stack, because I'm a soldier. You can see my face paint, know that I'ma get mine by knowing that the rest can't. We ready for 'em, let's get it on. We ready for 'em, let's get it on. We ready for 'em, let's get it on. We ready for 'em, let's get it on.
And welcome back to Match Play. He's Zach, I'm Creighton. This is we go around the wide world of sports, and I'm afraid I'm going to have to pay ABC royalties for that, but I don't really care. Let's start with the whole A-Rod drama. A-Rod's suspension was upheld, but it was reduced from 211 games to 162 games, essentially the entire 2014 season. Zach, fair or unfair?
I'm going to say that this is fair because if the Yankees make the playoffs, he's suspended from there too. So if they go 4 7-game series, or 3 7-game series and a 1 5-game, he almost gets around 200 games too. So I believe it's fair because A-Rod has really started to become a character of chaos in MLB. He's suing the Players Association, MLB itself, the Yankees. I don't like the Yankees personally, but I don't understand why they have to force with such a character in their clubhouse that's really starting to ruin what the Yankees are about, getting negative publicity in New York.
And I think one of the issues is with the Yankees, it's like they're spending $25 million or so a year on A-Rod, and now they're essentially off the hook for that. So that's one positive, but it's just A-Rod's basically being an annoying little jerk. I mean, you lost your case, and now you're going to try and find another avenue to play, try and get your suspension upheld through the court system, and it's ridiculous. And incidentally, there was an interview a couple weeks ago on 60 Minutes. Scott Pelley really asked some hard-hitting questions of Tony Bosch at the center of the scandal, and Commissioner Seelig, and Rob Manfred from MLB. Conspicuously absent was A-Rod, who was the only person he's talked to lately is his buddy Mike Francesa, a bloviating talk show host in New York, but nonetheless. We've gone to the Baseball Hall of Fame. It's going to have certainly a major Atlanta Braves flavor, as 2 former pitchers, 2 former managers, and yes, a third manager who never managed the Braves but had a cup of coffee with them, along with a slugger from Columbus, Georgia. Zach, it's like a Georgia Baseball Hall of Fame this year, I guess.
Yeah, and being from Georgia, I'm excited to see so many local grown talents finally enter the Hall of Fame. But the one player I want to talk about, and this really kind of annoys me. You missed by 2 votes. If you're Craig Biggio, I would be so upset because Biggio deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. He's one of those that some people might see as not great, but good enough to get there. But you have 3,000 hits. That's a milestone marker in your career. You deserve to be in there, even if it's 2 votes or not. But I'm happy to see the guys that got in, Maddox, Glavine, Thomas, and the others.
Yes, you had it's interesting, Torrey. A lot of people talking about, will he ever get in as a player? But he gets in as a manager, especially with a stint at the pre-A-Rod Yankees. That were I still can't stand the Yankees, but I mean, you look at what Joe Torre did. I have a lot of respect for him in that regard. But another player who was close, not as close as Biggio, is Mike Piazza, the catcher for the New York Mets. Born in Norristown, grew up in Phoenixville. He went to the same high school, not at the same time as ESPN's Dari Noka. So I think Piazza's probably one of the best slugging catchers of my generation, so we might see him in a couple years. So, you ready for some more football?
Absolutely.
Okay, here we go. The AFC title game and the NFC between the Patriots and Denver, and the NFC title game between San Francisco and Seattle. Both really good games, but they were marred by some stupid comments made. First, let's start with the AFC title game. Patriots head coach Bill Belichick obviously not pleased with Wes Welker's play on his cornerback Aqib Talib, quote, calling a play that knocked Talib out of the game by Welker, I quote, a deliberate play by Welker to take out Talib, and he called it, quote, one of the worst plays I've ever seen. Then you look at the NFC title game, Michael Sherman basically acting like a knucklehead, calling out Michael Crabtree after that tip pass in the end zone led to that interception. Zach, even if you take away from all the knucklehead comments, your thoughts on the games?
Well, I think the AFC game was actually a pretty good game. Peyton Manning proving again he doesn't lose to the same team twice in a year. He's never done that. So you had to expect that the Patriots would not really be a match for the Broncos. I did not expect the Patriots to be that flat, though. But the NFC game, that was such a sloppy game. Honestly, it was kind of entertaining to see the ball go back and forth. I'm happy Seattle won because then the Steelers can still be the only team with 6, which makes me happy as a Steelers fan. But Seattle, Richard Sherman, you're marring your team. And imagine what Peyton Manning and his receivers might do to you when you're in the Super Bowl in New York.
And that's the big difference right now you see between, even when Peyton Manning was with the Colts, you never saw that much drama. Yeah, I mean, Marvin Harrison, Reggie Wayne, they were his two go-to guys. They just came in, they made their catches. They didn't do any of this nonsense on the field. They just let their play do the talking. Richard Sherman may have converted more than a few fans into Broncos fans after he ran his mouth off. And Belichick, well, what can you say? The guy's a sore loser. I mean, Bill, do us a favor. Shut up, be humble, and act like you've been there before. Okay? Thank you. Now we go to Canada. Vancouver Canucks fans went to a fight and a hockey game broke out. 2 seconds into the Canucks game against the Calgary Flames, the fourth line for the Flames and the fourth line for the Canucks duke it out after the opening faceoff. 8 players ejected. But wait, there's more. Vancouver head coach John Tortorella, after the first intermission, decides he's going to go after the Calgary coaching staff, tries to start a melee outside the hallway. This is not Tortorella's first rodeo, if you will. 2 years ago, when he was coaching the Rangers, he did the same thing in Jersey. Put out his fourth line of goons. Devils put out their fourth line of goons, and we're ready to rumble. Zach, what up with that?
I completely put all the blame on John Tortorella. And last year we were on Match Play. I just remembered this morning. I predicted that Tortorella would be fired from the Rangers coach because they wouldn't do a good enough job during the season. Well, now he's taking his poison to Vancouver, and I like Vancouver. I like the Sedin twins, Kessler, Luongo I can deal with, but you're putting out there, and I kind of understand why he would not want to put out the Sedin twins against the fourth line. You want to protect your best players. He probably would have been fired for that. He might even get fired for this act, though, because he put in danger some of his players, and he tried to put himself in danger going after other players and coaches.
It just goes to show, honestly, Tortorella, what an idiot. There's no other polite way to put it. But, I mean, Peter Gammons, the longtime MLB columnist, first for ESPN, now with MLB Network, was saying, basically called hockey a minor sport. Well, first of all, Peter, I understand you're a baseball guy, but... And he made that comment after this Vancouver-Calgary drama. So what's interesting is that obviously it's not a minor sport, especially if you've ever been to Consol Energy Center. But that said, this is the kind of fight, though, that really gives hockey a black eye, no pun intended. And Tortorella is supposed to have a one-on-one meeting with the Dean of Discipline for the NHL in New York. So there may be some suspensions arising out of that game. So, if you remember, the movie Cool Runnings was about the Jamaican bobsled team and their improbable journey to the 1988 Calgary Olympics. Well, guess what? They're back. The Jamaican bobsled team of driver Winston Watson, brakeman Melvin Dixon qualified for the Olympics in Sochi, Russia. The only issue is they need about $80,000 to get over there, and they're trying to raise some money. Zach, bobsledding in Jamaica.
It's actually a storied tradition, I guess, in Jamaica because you never expect some of the lower countries below the equator, just a little bit north of it maybe, to make it to like the Winter Olympics, some of the tropical countries, but they need $80,000 to get there. And the same thing happened in 2010 in Vancouver. They qualified, didn't get there because of money, and it's just going to be sad to see if two people, Watts, he's actually been there a couple times. He's 46 years old, so he's been in the rodeo before. I think it's going to be really unfortunate if they can't get back there again because this is such a story for their country. Might be the only team Jamaica sends to the Winter Olympics.
And as touching on your point, I mean, even if they don't win, it's just, I think one of the things you have to remember, if you're running a bobsled, you got to be pretty quick. And we all know Jamaicans have a history of producing talented track athletes. Hello, Usain Bolt. But that's not going to. But I wouldn't ask Usain Bolt to jump into a bobsled. But I mean that, and I think that's where there's this. We just lost our mic. Lovely. So anyway, let's see what we got right, wrong, whatever. Our greenskeeper Matthew Hagee.
How's it going, guys? Very nice discussion between both of you. Creighton, I did see you catch Richard Sherman. You called him Michael Sherman the first time, but that's not a big deal. You made a good point there. Other than that, I was big into that cool runnings thing with Jamaica, so that's a big thing. I'm not a big Olympics guy myself following the bobsled thing, but overall, a pretty good discussion and a lot of good topics, good points on there with the Cal basketball team. That was very exciting to be a part of, and it's good to finally have a great chance to talk about basketball and what the team's done so far this season.
All right, and so who's the winner?
Well, the winner, Creighton, you will win today because of the comment about Bill Belichick. I cannot stand Bill Belichick, and when you called him a sore loser, you hit it spot on there because he deserved to lose that game. And for him to go at Wes Welker, one of the players that he formerly coached, and he really brought up and made him a great receiver that he is now, it's like you go against it. It's a clean play. Like he knocked Talib out. It's the second straight year Talib's got knocked out of the AFC Championship game. So other than that, great discussion. I mean, Creighton, I'll give you the nod for that comment. And also mentioning Mike Piazza from Phoenixville High School, where my grandfather went to. So very nice there.
Of course, Matt being another Eastern guy, I'll tell you, I'm rather humbled. But I mean, it's just the one thing about Belichick in closing that really irks me. It's still the way he ran up the score earlier this season against the Steelers. Yeah, the Steelers really had no chance of winning, but I mean, come on. I mean, that's been Belichick's MO for so many years. Run up the score. Who cares? I mean, probably one of the most classless guys in the NFL, and he certainly brought that point home this week after with his comments on a player. Without Bill Belichick, Wes Welker is basically a practice squad guy. It's the best way you can put it. So, with that said, that will wrap it up for our first edition of Match Play for the 2014 season. You can log on to cutv.calu.edu/live. You can watch highlights of Match Play in every basketball game that we've taped. So, for Zach and Matt, I'm Creighton. We'll see you next time on Match Play.